How can a game based on the hottest intellectual property in the world lose $63 million? The MCU was on a generational run in 2019. It was breaking box office records everywhere and captivating audiences with never-before-seen stories. So a video game adaptation only made sense, and no expense was spared in doing it. Marvel's Avengers would have a budget of around $200 million and a veritable who's who of voice actors to help bring these superheroes to the video game world. So how did this game get removed from storefronts worldwide only 3 years after its launch? Well, sit back, relax, and let me tell you the story of how Marvel's Avengers became a disaster. Our story begins in 2017, when the Avengers game was first teased to the public. This project was given to developer Crystal Dynamics and publisher Square Enix. Now, Crystal Dynamics had been on a really good run up to that point. They had made games like Gex, Walt Disney Magical Racing Tour, and there was this little-known niche franchise. Oh yeah, they had made every mainline Tomb Raider game released after 2005. So the Avengers game was in capable hands, but there was one small problem. Crystal Dynamics was a studio that specialized in single-player story games. Marvel's Avengers would be a multiplayer live service game, the complete opposite. Crystal Dynamics was given this project in 2016 and they had 4 years to figure out how to make this type of game. Then there was another problem. Crystal Dynamics did not have the licensing rights to the actors of the MCU. Now, in and of itself, this shouldn't have been an issue. These characters have been adapted thousands of times in a variety of mediums. It's common practice for each version of a hero to look a bit different, but the way Crystal Dynamics handled these heroes is what caused the problem. It's better that I show you. In June of 2019, 2 months after Endgame's release, Marvel's Avengers was officially revealed to the public. Now, as far as timing goes, there couldn't have been any better time to release this trailer. Superhero games like the Batman Arkham trilogy and Insomniac Spider-Man were still fresh in people's minds, and fans were still buzzing after the cultural phenomenon that was Endgame. As far as how this trailer actually performed, however, not very well. While the set piece shown was fine enough, the design of the heroes themselves did not go down well with fans. They looked like off-brand versions of the MCU heroes. And again, the issue isn't that they looked different to the MCU characters, it was the fact that they were the legally distinct versions of them. But that was only the first jab in Marvel's Avengers 1-2 combo of disappointment. Because more info started to get revealed about the game, and fans worldwide saw the two most dreaded words in the gaming industry: live service. This was a massive red flag for the community. Not only were live service games generally looked down upon, but this announcement came only 4 months after Anthem's catastrophic launch. Still, the game had the Avengers name on it, and if we fast forward to August of 2020, its beta became the most downloaded beta of all time in the PlayStation Store. The pandemic definitely had a hand in this, as it did with the game's development. We can very easily assume that the pandemic made it more difficult for Crystal Dynamics to further polish the game, but I don't know if any amount of polish could have saved it. On September 4th, 2020, Marvel's Avengers released, and it was not received well at all. Usually when I talk about a game, I like to give my opinion first and then compare my thoughts to the general consensus by critics and fans. I want to do the opposite in this video because I found the way critics treated this game to be very surprising. Marvel's Avengers received mixed reviews, and a lot of these reviews share the same opinion. The game's live service elements are bad, but the story and gameplay are very good. Let's start with the story. The way Marvel's Avengers works is that first there's a dedicated 10-hour single-player campaign, which is then followed by the live service portion of the game. I really didn't enjoy the campaign. It's important to remember that before the first Avengers movie, there were 5 movies that took the time to properly introduce 5 of the 6 main protagonists, as well as the main antagonist. So when they were placed in a situation where they had less time to shine due to there being more characters to juggle, the Avengers movie could always rely on the audience knowing these characters from their previous films. The Avengers game did not have that luxury. It had to introduce 6 new heroes from scratch, which is why an anchor character was needed. A character that the plot could revolve around, lessening the burden of developing the characters of the rest of the Avengers. You know, kinda like how Thanos functioned in Infinity War. So, Miss Marvel was chosen for the task, replacing Hawkeye in the team. Sorry Hawkeye fans, all three of you. I did not like Miss Marvel in this game. She oftentimes feels less like a person and more like a walking advertisement. She's insufferably happy to be there. Miss Marvel is an Avengers fangirl, and she makes sure to buy all the merch and read all the comics and watch all the movies, and she definitely buys all the cosmetics for Marvel's Avengers. And every hero seems to remember her and the story she submitted for a contest. And right from the jump, I had this tonal whiplash where she's excited to meet all these legally distinct heroes, meanwhile I don't have a clue who any of these people even are. The game relies heavily on your past experiences with these heroes because it doesn't do a great job in spotlighting them. Besides Miss Marvel, it's the Hulk that gets a lot of the spotlight, and that's about it. But let's back up a bit. What's the Avengers even about? Well, the game starts with the entire city of San Francisco celebrating A-Day, a day dedicated to the Avengers. In order to celebrate, the Avengers bring an unstable chemical reactor to the middle of the city. To the surprise of no one, the villains attack and the reactor blows up. But instead of killing people, it turns them into inhumans. They also have superpowers, but their use is more unpredictable and harder to control. An evil corporation called AIM takes advantage of the situation by taking over the city and hunting down inhumans for their own sinister needs. The Avengers are outlawed, so it's up to Miss Marvel to reassemble them and take down AIM. There is an interesting story to be told here, but I feel like Marvel's Avengers fails to deliver. Reassembling the Avengers couldn't be less interesting. When you find most of them, they're usually in a bitter or resentful state. If we knew who these people are, it could be something compelling. But since this is our first impression of them, it's really hard to care about their conflict. And the writing of this game really isn't helping. For example, when you find Tony Stark, he's mad at the Hulk for agreeing with the court that the Avengers are a danger to society. And obviously Stark is right here. Their only crime was bringing a bionuke to the middle of San Francisco. In the movies, it's interesting to see heroes argue because we know what drives them and how they are as people. So when their ideologies clash, it's fascinating to watch. But when the game immediately starts by having them argue and bicker without properly developing their personalities first, it just makes everyone unlikable. And the dialogue in this game misses the mark so often. Okay, there's the Whedon-esque quips, which I am tired of, but are par for the course. That's one thing, but the game also fails to deliver in serious moments. Like when Thor finally rejoins the team, his first one-liner back is, "You should know, I'm not in the best of moods." Really? That's the best you could come up with? Could you imagine Thor entering Wakanda with this line? But that's alright. I also heard the gameplay is really good, right? The highest praise I can give the gameplay is that it's functional. You press punch and your hero punches. You press dodge and your hero dodges. Is it fun? No, not really. The first thing I noticed was just how little impact my attacks had. Yes, my opponent's health bars were moving, but landing blows felt very unsatisfying. I think a lot of that comes down to weak sound and particle effects, as well as enemies not really reacting to getting hit. The crux of this game's combat is hitting and dodging with some abilities sprinkled in. I found this to be incredibly boring and repetitive. You spend the whole game just punching other things. And there have been other games that have offered this particular combat style and at a very high level. But here, your enemies aren't aggressive, they don't try to surround you, and in general, they feel more like punching bags waiting to be taken out. The game's idea of a challenging foe is one with a very large health bar, but even they can be very easily stun-locked in a corner until they die after 75 hits. The mission design isn't helping either. You get dropped into a sandbox and after using an admittedly fun movement system, you are tasked with one of few objectives. Beat up your enemies while in a circle, beat up your enemies out of a circle, and my favorite, punching inanimate objects until they're destroyed. Because that's what I expected from my Avengers game, vandalizing property. And the characters themselves just didn't feel different enough. They may have different abilities, but the basics of punching and dodging are all pretty much the same. Some may attack quicker, or some may have a ranged attack, but their damage output remains largely the same. It's weird seeing the Hulk needing the same time to dispatch an enemy as every other hero. I recognize that it wouldn't have been easy, but I would have loved for an attempt to have been made at giving each hero a specialty. Something like how they're handled in Marvel Rivals. It wouldn't be perfect, but at least there would be some variety. For a game that's technically made to be played forever, it's surprisingly dull to play, and the cherry on top are the live service elements. After you beat the game, you are given the option to grind. Grind samey, repetitive missions that you've already seen dozens of times already. And even if you can't stomach defeating the same enemies in the same areas doing the same objectives, what's your reward? Invisible gear. Since the game's skins were locked behind paywalls, the gear you find in missions goes beneath the hero's skin. So now your reward is a level 15 invisible gear piece over your level 13 one. This is one step away from just straight up dropping the pretenses and rewarding you with just plain numbers. Yes, other games have level based gear, but at least there you can have in-universe reasons as to why the gear is of a higher level. Maybe the build quality is better, or different materials were used, or it was made by another manufacturer. Things like that. Why is the gear piece a higher level than the other in Marvel's Avengers? Reasons I guess. Now, when we looked at other live service failures on the channel like Concord, Anthem and Highguard, something that all these had in common was that they were new IPs. They were meant to be games that took over your life, but had to start from scratch in terms of gaining people's attention. Marvel's Avengers did not have that problem. It's just a good old-fashioned terrible video game. But annoyingly, it's not terrible in a funny way. Mind's Eye was terrible, but it was also kinda funny to play due to how broken it was at launch. Everything in Marvel's Avengers functions, it's just intensely boring. This is the worst kind of bad game. One that fails to execute in almost every area, not in a comedic way, but in a way where I'd rather watch paint dry in slow motion. This game really frustrates me, and I think part of that is the negative ripple effect it had on the industry. Since Crystal Dynamics couldn't work on both the third game in the Tomb Raider trilogy and the Avengers, they handed Shadow of the Tomb Raider to Eidos Montreal, and to me, the game was a downgrade compared to its predecessors. And let's not forget that Guardians of the Galaxy, which was a genuinely well-crafted single-player story, did not sell well because people were afraid of a repeat of Marvel's Avengers. To their credit, Crystal Dynamics kept updating the game, even finally releasing Hawkeye as a playable character. Unfortunately, the updates weren't just for adding free content. This game's monetization strategy was very bad. First off, we had the cosmetics. If you wanted to buy every cosmetic in this game, you would have to pay over $3,000. In a full-priced game, mind you. And that's without talking about challenge cards. Instead of having a standard universal battle pass, each character had their own personal battle pass that you had to pay $10 to unlock. So you had to pay $10 for each character separately to gain the right to grind out new animations for them. Then, taking a page out of Assassin's Creed Odyssey's playbook, an update made XP a lot tougher to gain, and XP boosters were made available for purchase. I can't tell you how much I dislike this, and doubly so as it was done after launch. The interesting thing is that the game's player base was quickly dwindling. It had under 1,000 players on Steam about a month after its launch. Why try and milk them instead of giving them an experience that could be worth convincing their friends to return to the game? I'll tell you why. It's because this update happened right around the time Marvel's Avengers was made available on Xbox Game Pass in 2021, where player counts would obviously increase. I don't know, did Crystal Dynamics see the influx of players and were like, hold on, we can't be having that, make sure they don't stay. I guess a token attempt was made at providing something good. I tried playing the Black Panther story expansion, but it didn't really tackle any of the core problems the game had. It was just more gameplay for the few people that were left to play it. So after the first mission, I checked out, and I haven't loaded the game up ever since. Despite the efforts of Crystal Dynamics, Marvel's Avengers was delisted on September 30th, 2023, only 3 years after its launch. It's still playable, but you can't buy it on digital storefronts anymore. What a miserable experience this was. Marvel's Avengers failed to meet both critical and financial goals, and the consequences behind that failure were devastating. Crystal Dynamics has only now started recovering from this 6 years later. They haven't released another game in this time frame. To cover for their losses, Square Enix sold their Western studios, including Crystal Dynamics, for $300 million to Embracer Group in 2022. But it was only just recently that we got a glimpse at Crystal Dynamics' new Tomb Raider games. And I really wish them the best. I really liked the games they made before the Avengers. Although, if you had played Tomb Raider 2013's multiplayer mode, you could probably tell that the writing was on the wall long before Avengers even released. It would take many more years and billions of dollars for the industry to learn its lesson, but at least there has been a noticeable reduction in live service games. There has also been a noticeable reduction in games in general, but that's also in part due to all the cancelled live service games. But if there's one thing we can learn from this situation, is that you can have the biggest IP in the world and a massive budget, but it won't mean anything if you can't make a good game. And you might think that this is a basic argument to make, but I'm surprised this game didn't make a profit off its brand name alone. Marvel's Avengers should have been a layup, and in a sense it was, just of the Aaron Fox variety. Thank you for watching the video, subscribe if you enjoyed it, and if you want to watch how another multi-million-dollar franchise died, you can click here to watch how Watch Dogs self-destructed. I'll see you in the next one.